All right, what's up guys? Today I'm giving you the full review on the GX2 Power Series. If you haven't already seen my first impressions video, make sure to go check that video out first because I cover a lot of the small details like specs, the differences between this and the last GX2, and other things that you might need. In this video, I'm going to be focusing on things that changed from the initial impressions as well as some paddle comparisons. So if you do want the full picture, it will be important for you to go check out that video. The first thing we need to talk about is that this paddle has a break-in period. One of the things that changed from when this paddle was new is that the sound pitch has changed slightly and the face feels softer on ball contact and the paddle definitely hits harder. I would say this took about 5 hours of play before the break-in happened, and since then it hasn't continued to change. I've compared it side by side with a brand new identical unit so that it was easier to spot some of the changes. The break-in period is nothing like the old Pro Power elongated break-in period, but the power definitely went up enough to notice it, especially on softer shots. When the paddle was brand new, the face felt a little stiffer and closer to how the Joola is, but after the break-in, the gap is definitely a bit bigger and there's a more distinct feel between the two of them. In my opinion, when the paddle was new, it was easier for me to use and I didn't really struggle as much, but post break-in, the pop and power going up made it quite a bit harder for me to reset with, and also just placing the ball on shorter strokes, like taking a ball out of the air at the kitchen or rolling a ball softly cross court out of the air. Those types of shots became a lot more difficult and I just felt less comfortable overall. And now, surprisingly enough, I actually don't think it's the pop and power that's making it hard to control, and this is where I think it's going to get a little bit subjective from player to player. As I've used this GX2 Power more, it felt like the feel of the paddle got softer and a little more dampened than when it was newer. And because of that, on certain shots, it felt like it was a lot harder for me to feel the ball and figure out where I was placing it. And then you combine that with the very high dwell time that this paddle has, where the ball just really sinks in and feels like it's getting slung off the paddle. That feeling in combination just made me feel less confident in a lot of my shots. So it's not that this paddle is the most powerful thing that's ever been seen in pickleball and you're just going to pop every dink up. For me personally, I think it's more to do with the feel of the paddle than the actual power. It felt like the best way for me to play with this post break-in was just to play very aggressive all the time. Because if I gave my opponent the chance to speed up or make me hit a lot of resets, I just didn't feel very comfortable. So by playing aggressive, I could avoid that situation more often than not. But that isn't really how I like to play for my play style. I'm someone who likes to be a bit more balanced and not just bang the ball all the time. I don't mind hitting a number of resets to get to the kitchen, and with the GX2 Power, I just found myself thinking about it more than I wanted to. So do expect that this paddle is going to change a bit from when it's brand new. Now, I don't do this often, but just to give you guys more of a data point than I think it hits harder, here are some serve speed tests that I did just to get an idea of what was going on. I took my Pro 4 Scorpius 16mm, and that had an average serve reading of 56.6 miles per hour, a brand new GX2 Power, which was 57.2 miles per hour, and then my broken in GX2 Hybrid was 59.1 miles per hour. So it makes sense that from my first impression, the GX2 and Joola seemed more comparable, and as I've used it more, the gap between them became more significant. I also have to imagine that a lot of people's perception with the Joola versus the GX2 will be how used either paddle is. If one is more used than another, it will probably hit harder. With the Joola, that tends to mean the core is on the way out, and with the GX2, I honestly don't know what that means. It could literally just be the materials inside loosening up, or it could be a sign that there's going to be a longer term issue. At this time, it's impossible to say. But anyways, those are the data points that I have currently. Now, as far as weight goes, I did end up trying a weight setup on my GX2 Hybrid, though if I'm being honest, I could probably play this paddle stock and be perfectly content. I thought the stability out of the box was very good, and adding weight was more out of habit and wanting to see how it would impact the paddle more than feeling like the paddle had a severe weakness that needed correcting. I ended up doing 1 gram per inch tungsten tape from the throat up into the bottom corners and then added a Hesicore grip. The specs honestly didn't change all that much. The swing weight went from 111 to 113. The twist weight went from 6.42 to 7.15, and static weight went from 7.9 to 8.6 ounces. Overall, this did increase stability and plow through, but I'd be completely fine playing this paddle stock. All right, the first comparison we're gonna go over is the Joola Pro IV, since in my first impressions, I was saying that these two are going to be big competitors against each other. The biggest difference that I think people are going to notice is that, one, the Joola Pro IV is stiffer and has more feedback. This may lead to people believing that it has more pop because the rebound at the net feels quicker and more instant, whereas on the GX2 Power, it feels more like a slingshot where the ball comes into the face and then slowly launches out. Now, number two, in stock form, the GX2 Power sweet spot feels better to me. I would say they're both good, but on the Pro 4, I felt like weight was more necessary than it was on the GX2. On the Scorpius, I ended up doing a similar setup as what I did on the GX2, but instead of 1 gram per inch, it was half gram per inch, and I just went further up the sides of the paddle, and I did feel like that fixed up the stability nicely. Number 3, one advantage that Joola has is they just have more shape options currently. They have a wide body with a long handle, and then they have 4 elongated options with different handle lengths, whereas Gearbox only has 1 elongated with a short handle and then a hybrid, which Joola does not currently offer. So if you are an elongated player and you like long handles, well, Joola has that and Gearbox doesn't. Number 4, the big advantage Gearbox should have over the Pro 4 is durability with their SST carbon fiber core. The Pro 4s at this point have been out for several months, and it's clear that they still have core crushing issues, especially for higher level players who hit hard. The only thing that makes me just a little hesitant is that break-in period. We already saw this once with the Pro Power elongated, so it just makes me wonder if the GX2 Power is going to keep going, or if they did find a way to level off that break-in period. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I've played with this GX2 Power a bunch, and since the initial break-in, I haven't noticed anything extra, but I haven't used this for like 4, 5, 6 months, you know, so it's hard to say for sure. Both companies do offer a 1-year warranty, so if you do have any issues, you should be taken care of. Number 5, which one would I take to a tournament? Honestly, at the moment, if someone told me I had to pick one that would take me the furthest in a tournament, I actually think I would take the Scorpius 16mm. The primary reason for this is I just had an easier time placing balls, dropping, and doing anything related to my soft game. The power wasn't as big on the Joola, but for the way that I play, that trade-off was actually better for me. I also think the stiffer, more immediate feedback made it easier for me to understand and gauge how I was hitting the ball, whereas on the Gearbox, since it feels a little bit more dampened and the ball sinks in a little bit more, sometimes I kind of felt like I was guessing exactly where the ball was going to go. So you need to weigh the pros and cons and figure out which of these things are the most important to you. I'd highly recommend demoing both if you get the chance before making a decision. All right, next up we have the J2NF. A lot of you on Instagram requested this comparison, and I can understand why, since the paddle has been talked about so much and so positively, but in my opinion, these paddles are kind of in 2 different types of categories, and I don't know that I would really put them head to head. The NF is in the lower tier of power paddles, and the GX2 post break-in is on the high end of power. For most amateur players, the NF would be a lot easier to use because of the toned down pop. The GX2 would be better for players who are very aggressive, want to end points quickly, and love to counter at the net. The NF is more for people wanting to dabble in the power category, but still have a very balanced paddle, and the GX2 is for more advanced players who can control a high level amount of power and want to overwhelm their opponent. The NF feels a bit more dense and stiff to me, which makes it a little bit more predictable and easy to use when compared to the more dampened feel of the GX2 Power. So I think you're going to pick one of these based on the power level you want. If you want top tier power, GX2. If you want more balance, J2NF. Next up is the Body Helix FLIK F1. The FLIK hits harder than the GX2, but it comes at a massive expense of control. In my opinion, the sweet spot and power drop off when you miss center on the F1 is massive, and on the GX2, it plays a lot more consistently across the entire face. The spin on the F1 is definitely better than the GX2. Honestly, it's pretty insane what that paddle can do as far as spin goes, but that's the only thing that, in my opinion, it actually does better than the GX2. You know how in a video game, some players just boost one stat on their character, like the power, and ignore everything else? That's kind of how the F1 feels to me. It feels like they just maxed out the power stat, whereas Gearbox did put a lot of points into the power stat, but then balanced it out and put some points in a few of the other things. To me, the F1 is for 5.0 plus players, and then the GX2, I would say, would be 4.5 and above. It's still a hard paddle to use, but not nearly as hard as the F1. The last one everyone wants me to talk about is the Selkirk Project Boomstik. Feels like the Boomstik has more power or very equivalent power to a broken-in GX2. The main difference that I am noticing between the two of those is that on the GX2 Power, the feel is a lot softer and more dampened, like I've said a couple times now, and on the Boomstik, The paddle is very loud, the feedback is very immediate, it's very crisp, the paddle is on the stiffer side, but both of them hit the ball very hard. One of the biggest differences that you're going to find between this and the GX2 Power is that Selkirk is using their Infinigrit, which they claim lasts 3 times longer than raw carbon fiber, and that's something we'll be looking to test. Now that Selkirk has finally put Infinigrit on a paddle that people actually want to use, we might finally get some data on how well Infinigrit actually holds up. So in theory, if that holds up, then maybe the Boomstik feels more worth it to people because the spin longevity is greater, but we don't actually know that for sure yet. But overall, both of them are great elite power paddles, and which one you choose to use will largely come down to the feel off the face that you want. Because as far as things like stability and sweet spot go, they're pretty equal across the board. To wrap this all up, let's talk about who the GX2 Power is for and who it isn't for. If you own a Pro 4, you don't need a GX2 Power. The only reason I would say to switch is if you've broken a bunch of the Pro 4s and are tired of it. But otherwise, the performance of a Pro 4 is still top notch and there's no need to go spend another $280. I also would not buy the GX2 Power if you've struggled with power paddles in the past. These are going to be for people who have their soft game more dialed in and have control over all of their strokes. I would definitely call this more of an advanced paddle to use. It's also not for someone who wants super immediate pop. If you like stiff paddles that are crisp and the ball wants to get off the face immediately, that's not quite the feedback that the GX2 is going to give you. Now, the GX2 Power is for people who want a power paddle that isn't as stiff as some of the other ones. Both the Boomstik and the Pro 4 feel stiffer and a little bit more harsh at feedback than the GX2 does. It's also for people who have very aggressive play styles. If you know you're a big banger, you like to drive and crash, set up a shake and bake, then this is a great paddle for that, just like the Boomstik and Joola Pro 4. And then finally, I think one of the other appealing reasons to check out the GX2 is if you're a huge fan of the hybrid shape, because with the other top tier power paddles like the Boomstik and Pro 4, those don't offer a hybrid shape. So if you're a really big fan of that shape, you're only going to find that in the GX2 Power. Now, I know it probably sounds like throughout this video, I'm giving the GX2 a lot of negatives. And really, those negatives are specifically for my play style. I can recognize that the GX2 is a very, very good power paddle with traits that can be really appealing to certain play styles. But for my specific play style, I find that the Pro 4 and the Boomstik fit how I like to play a little bit better. So at the end of the day, I think the largest deciding factor is going to be the feel that you want off the face of your paddle. If you want something that's going to be stiffer and more immediate pop, then Boomstik and Pro 4. If you're someone who wants the ball to really feel like it's sinking into the face and getting a lot of dwell time and you want a softer, more cushioned feedback, then the GX2 after it's broken in is going to give that to you. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Gearbox has finally entered the realm of elite performance, and it's about time with how much they've talked about their ability to engineer paddles better than everyone else. For Gearbox's sake, I really hope this doesn't repeat the same story with the Pro Power elongated, but I'll keep you guys updated if I hear anything. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.